Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me on my second podcast.
Hey, it's something that we've been trying to do for a while, and I'm actually glad that it's finally coming into fruition.
Definitely, because we have been talking for what I think at least over a year about getting together, doing a podcast, and just sitting down and having a good conversation. So, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What brought you to my podcast? What is it that you want to dive into today?
There's a few things. The main thing I wanted to really dive into is just, how social media has been changing how we interact with one another, particularly in like the friendship type of way. And this has a lot to do with multiple factors. I know everybody is busy with their jobs and their school, and we hardly have time to hang out with anyone anymore. And social media kind of jumps into that little sliver of time that we have in order to interact with one another. But I have a feeling that there are many like ramifications for that, largely because we substitute the actual human interaction for something more virtual. And although that might be great, then we're able to connect with one another more than we could ever do in human history. At the same time, we're subject to the algorithms and the personalization of our own profiles, such that when we do interact with one another, it's usually through a specific lens, and we assume that everybody sees the same thing we do, that everyone believes the same thing we do. So then when you run into somebody who doesn't, then it causes, lots of hostility and toxicity, not just with like random people you meet online, but also people that you know in real life. They could post up that one thing that gets you offended, and you just immediately see them as like the worst piece of shit imaginable. And it just makes and breaks friendships, honestly. And it's so volatile now. It used to be that, when you could hang out with somebody, you can see their differences, see their flaws, and, you still accept it more often than not. Of course, if they're a straight up pedophile, that's one thing you're going to say, fuck you piece of shit. But, if it's something like, oh, I don't like, or they have a specific opinion on gun control or on abortions or stuff like that, you can still disagree with them vehemently, but, you can kind of see past it and see the person as a person. Nowadays, everybody is contingent on believing exactly the same as you do. And if they don't, then you immediately disown them, distance yourself away from them, ostracize them. And, in the extreme cases, you start to try to cancel them by digging up old things they post online and say, hey, this guy said 10 years ago this really risque joke, so I'm going to call him out on it 10 years in the future.
I don't like cancel culture, and I feel like cancel culture is like it stems from tribalism, which is something I feel like we're reverting back to. We
Hmm.
kind of always had it, with sports teams or artists, maybe specific genres, don't like each other or something. I feel like we really saw this tribalistic polarization, especially with the 2016 election. People were really picking sides. There was, what was it? I think it was Bernie or bust. I think
Hmm.
that's what it was called. Now, I'm a Bernie supporter, but I felt like that was a very immature way to go about. If Bernie doesn't win the nomination, then I just won't vote at all. I feel like that's very damaging, and that kind of mindset is acceptable. And I hate to say it, but if you look at the Republican side, that's not something that they like. Okay, so it's not Rubio, all right, it's not Jeb Bush, all right, it's going to be Trump, all right, well, let's all rally behind him. And I feel like that's why he won, is because at the end of the day, Republicans will still vote for Republicans even if they don't like the Republican. And more than ever on Facebook with everything, the Democrats are just people who are more liberal in general. They are more likely to distance themselves from someone. It's just like you said, if there's just one thing they don't agree with, then they want to distance themselves from that person. And that happens all the time. And it's very frustrating because it's like you said with the cancel culture thing. I know you're talking about James Gunn, and he said some racy joke 10 years ago when he was trying to be a comedian, and he clearly didn't do a good job at it, at being a comedian, because he's not a comedian anymore. He did it 10 years ago, and it was just a joke. And I feel like, especially if you're a comedian or you're portrayed as a comedian, I feel like you should be able to say just about anything, because people need to understand that this is what they do. This is their job, is to make you feel uncomfortable, to try and help you get out of that shell of, everyone has this shell right now and they want to protect themselves and their kids and their loved ones from any kind of negativity, any kind of humor that they think is just super toxic when it's just humor. James Gunn made a joke about, I think it was about what, babies or something. I don't think he wants to go around hurting babies, or this cancel culture stuff is just really frustrating and Facebook is really fueling it. I feel like it's just getting worse.
Yeah, and I mean, what I've been noticing a lot is, particularly when people confront them about, hey, why are you allowing these things on your site? Now, I'm not one to say censor people because I'm all for free speech and all that, but there are certain things that need to be noticed, especially if Facebook touts their community standards, which gets me banned on there all the fucking time. Because with me, they totally do it. I say one bad thing about religion, and everyone's like, nah, Alex has to go. But when it comes to, I don't know, some people, hyper politics and people causing people to be more polarized and seeing each other person as their mortal enemy, and then that leads to real life violence, then that's something that they should notice and actually try to actually uphold the community standards that they really tout all the time. And they say, oh, we're just going to rely on the goodwill of users, which that would be good if Facebook wasn't such an international entity, if it wasn't so big, because you can't just say the goodwill will always prevail because you have more people into the platform. When you add more people into the platform, that causes more ideas to exist. And when more ideas exist, that could go one of many ways. It could be a really good thing because the marketplace of ideas will have new assets. But at the same time, if toxic ideas exist, and I'm not one to define what a toxic idea is, what I could say is if it's an idea that's designed deliberately to cause dissent, to cause division, to not add to the conversation, but rather to instigate toxicity, then those ideas are stuff that Facebook needs to make sure to corral and to correct and to make sure that it doesn't cause such a widespread situation, such as what we have seen in 2016. And I'm not one to say that it was because of specific agents such as Russian bots or such as Redditors or 4chan or 8chan. I can't specifically state who did it, but but I can say that it was a collective clusterfuck of things that happened, particularly in that year. And Facebook just let it happen because one thing that I've noticed is most people get their news not from television or from like news outlets online, but mostly through Facebook. And usually they get their information from their friends because their friends find an article and then they share it. Sometimes those articles have, I can't even say sometimes, most of the time, the articles that other people share are primarily very confirmation bias sites, such as Occupy Democrats or Breitbart or the other 98% or what have you. That particular year was absolutely phenomenal for hyperpolitics sites to exist and to flourish because one, you can just immediately quote a politician's statement and make an entire derailment or an entire hot take on what they said to rally up your base. And it's funny because those sites are straight up caricatures of how the actual parties exist. But because of those caricature sites, we started to see that people on the right started to become more further right. People on the left started to become more further left. The right doesn't have this issue as much now, but the left surely does. Now it's to the point that the left has lots of purity tests where you have to believe certain political ideologies. And if you don't agree with one thing, then you're basically right wing. You're basically, right of I can't believe I'm saying this. It sounds extreme. It's like, oh, you're just right of Lenin, because that's what I'm noticing. It's becoming a lot more socialistic. Now, to be fair, there are certain aspects of socialism that could be applicable, but the average American, one, doesn't really understand much how it works, and two, they hear socialism, they immediately think communism. So you can't just do that and expect to have the entire United States backing up an ideology that we were so vehemently against for like what, since the 50s? But that's how I'm noticing it, because people are becoming a lot more partisan, a lot more negative towards one another.
That's something that I'm noticing more and more, and I have to pretty much stay away from Facebook. I see Facebook as this site that they don't really care. I feel like they don't really care what's going on. I don't think Mark Zuckerberg cares. I think he knows what's going on, and if he doesn't, then that's just even worse because it just shows a lack of accountability. But I feel like they don't care because they get paid. They make ad revenue when these sites post something and there's an ad. Facebook can put the ads that they want on these sites or these organizations, and they make money from it. I just don't think Facebook realizes how powerful they really are. I mean, they probably do, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they don't really see or they don't care what's going on. And it's not a left or right thing. This should be everyone should be concerned about it because now you can't even play a game unless you log on as a Facebook user. Usually it's faster, it's easier, and almost every game that I have requires you to sign in through Facebook. Spotify is even through Facebook, or you can sign up through an email. And
Mhm.
I feel like companies don't care because they know how many people are on Facebook. I think it's what, over a billion. It's a lot of stuff being circulated. Go any further than that. It's just like you said, I could send someone an article and I hope they would read it. I have a feeling that a handful of people will just read the headline article says, and then they'll take that at face value. And then they'll be like, okay, so that's what's going on. And then they'll have an opinion, look at what I sent them and say, well, I'm going to click into this and I'm going to see if this is legitimate. We are getting more and more people that are doing that because of what's going on with Facebook, because of all, technically it is called fake news. There is
Mm.
fake news out there. I don't think it's fake when it's something you don't want to hear. I feel like that's just narcissism. We're on this train, Facebook's at the front, and the users, where all the users are in the train cars, and the train's going on this long track, and Mark Zuckerberg has jumped off the train and he disabled the braking mechanism. It's like it's nonstop in this singular direction, and it doesn't seem like it's gonna slow down anytime soon.
And especially with the upcoming election, I know there were many sites that are trying to say now that they're going to try to prevent another 2016 situation, but it's a little late for that, because once you start saying that, once people become more aware of how these sites work, then some actions that the sites might do in order to try to corral these types of fake news from being released could then be seen as a form of censorship. Especially conservatives would come out and say, okay, you're now doing this because you don't like the fact that a Republican won. So now you're going to try to censor conservative news and conservative outlets, which there are instances where you could say that that is the case, where they are banning specific conservative views and they're not allowing that on their platform. And all the while, they're allowing more left leaning sites to exist to push their ideas. And what needs to happen is, if you're going to be more accountable, as people are trying, as these big tech companies are trying to propose, they have to do everything with a sweeping brush. They have to get everybody. And it's not just one party that's doing it, it's everybody that's doing it. And it's not even just the parties doing it, it's just there are those detractors that exist to try to rally things up and just to instigate and see what happens. And I don't know how we're going to go from there. And I don't even, like you said earlier, that Facebook might not even be aware of what's going on, which kind of parrot what you said. I'm pretty sure they do, because they see all the money they're making and they see what they could do in order to expand their business. It's all a business. That's at the end of the day, Facebook is a business that's searching for its own best interest and not necessarily the interests of its customers. But also, to kind of jump into what they could do, I realized earlier this week that Twitter decided to remove all news outlets or like news articles to be shared on their site, which is a good thing because that could help out. Now, Twitter is a more, in my personal opinion, Twitter is much more of an issue than Facebook is, because you got all these blue check marks that have their own opinion pieces, and because they have a blue check mark, they have this feeling that they're all super validated. It's in the similar vein as how Facebook has their Facebook business profiles, and if you have that blue check mark, you have kind of more of a say, which honestly you don't. What matters more is not what the site says you are. What matters is the quality of the content that you share, the quality of the information, the accuracy of it. Since everybody has their own opinion pieces and everyone has their own hot takes, particularly on Twitter, that it becomes way more toxic. And that's why I avoid Twitter like the plague as well. But to be fair with them, they did start doing that where they're removing these news sites from publishing their articles on Twitter. I don't think Facebook's going to do that because Facebook sees too much money in it, and Facebook is much bigger than Twitter ever will be. So I don't think they'll be doing that anytime soon. But the only way they will actually do stuff is if a lot of people start leaving their platforms, which is on the surface it could be very easy to do, but if when you dig down, it's really hard because Facebook, like Twitter and like any other social media outlet, is designed to be addictive. It's very much, it feeds you that dopamine rush, especially whenever you share something and you get a bunch of likes, lots of comments, lots of shares, lots of retweets, lots of reposts. You get lots of people tagging you when you post up something good. And everyone always has that one instance where they get so much interaction. Like I remember on my personal profile, I did a post that it was cute, it was inspirational. It was something like, no matter what happens in life, you can start over. And it's a photo of a tree stump. In the middle of the tree stump is another tree growing. So that blew up. I had like 4,000 or 5,000 likes, 20,000 shares, and like 300 plus comments. And ever since then, I'm like, I need to replicate this again, which is a disgusting thing. It's so fucking pathetic. When you think about it, it's like, why should I fucking care about the validation of people I will never fucking know about? It's so fucking pathetic. It's disgusting. But you get that dopamine rush when a lot of people start seeing your shit and a lot of people start sharing it. And then you keep trying to do it. And then the other disgusting thing that I would do personally, and I know a lot of other people do this shit too, is if you post something and it doesn't get as many likes as you think it would, you delete it because you feel like, oh, I'm defeated. I didn't get so many likes. I didn't get the attention I wanted. It's like, shut the fuck up, you fucking lonely piece of shit. Just
Dude,
don't.
that is exactly what happens to me sometimes.
Mhm.
I get very jaded when I post something on my Instagram and the day before that post gets, 2,000, 3,000 likes, and then the post I post the next day will get within 2 hours it only gets 300 likes. I'm like, what the fuck? I normally get about 1,000 likes within 2 to 3 hours. And you're right. I love that. And if I don't get that amount of likes within that time frame, I'm like, this is funny. Fuck you guys. I honestly, I'm like, I get so angry with my followers in just that moment because I'm like, how is this not funny? And then I do delete it, and I'm so embarrassed that I'm thinking about it. I do that.
We all sound like crackheads online. It's like, shit, we didn't get as much of a hit as the last time. So fuck you. That's what it feels like. Social media really caters to that because everyone, especially I remember some people, they would come to me when I used to run my pages on Facebook and all that, and they wanted me to add them as an admin. And I'm like, okay, so what do you got? And then this one person was like, oh, I got retweeted from Richard Dawkins the other day. I'm like, that's fucking great. I wish I got retweeted by Richard Dawkins, but I'm still not letting you on because you haven't shown me any good quality. And that's always funny because everyone sees, oh, I got reposted by this big page, or oh, this my favorite celebrity liked my post and they started sharing it. Oh, this one other person just randomly stumbled upon my post and now it blew up and now I got all these new followers. So yeah, I'm important. No, you're fucking not. You're really not. And that's something that people need to accept. And I mean, yes, you are important. Everyone is fucking important in this planet. I'm not saying that you're not, but at the same time, like your validation, your importance is not contingent on how many people follow you. It's not contingent on how many people like your shit, how many people comment on it, how many people know you by name. Your importance is not determined by that. Your importance is determined by how you value your fucking life. And if you value your life based on the validation of others, you're not really fucking living.
Know exactly what you're talking about. I got real excited last year when Elon Musk followed me on Instagram. I had to put it in my bio, and he
Mhm.
messaged me. He liked a couple of my posts. One of them was physics joke about what would happen if Superman really picked up Lois Lane as she was falling, and it shows her as a skeleton because that's what would actually happen. And he liked it, and he followed me for a couple of months, and then a bunch of stuff happened with his personal life, and then he just started unfollowing people, and then he just got off social media, I think, except for Twitter now, because he got in trouble with his company. I have several famous people who follow me. I don't think that I'm important because they follow me. I am excited that they follow me
Mhm.
because it makes me feel like someone who is seen as important on a social level likes my content. That does make me happy. I don't think I'm some boss now because I have a handful of verified people who follow me and actually interact with me. If anything, I'm just happy that they're so down to earth because you get this idea that if you're a celebrity or you're in a certain industry, then you have time to talk to people and be a real person. But a lot of them do. A lot of the
Mhm.
accounts, I would argue, that are probably the most fake would probably be the biggest accounts. Like maybe Beyonce's account. I'm sure she doesn't go on there. She's probably too busy. Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I'm pretty sure he doesn't. Check his. I'm sure he doesn't check his social media as much. They all seem to do Twitter, but I'm pretty sure it's probably their assistants that's probably tweeting for them. You know what I mean? I just don't see them ever having the time to really interact with people like that. I did hear an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson about how he does interact with people who will send him letters, and he wants to respond to everybody. I thought that
Mhm.
was really cool. But just to get back on this cancel culture thing, it really makes me want to talk about something that happened last year, or maybe it was this year. It's been a long year. Alex Jones, you know who he is, was permanently banned from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And when he got banned, a lot of people were saying this violates the First Amendment of free speech. But I would argue that that's not the case because these are private companies, and when you create an account on these private companies, you agree to their terms and conditions, and in all reality, they can do what they want. It's like if Facebook was a brick and mortar location and everyone went in there to like and comment and watch videos, right? If they don't like what you're saying, then they can make you leave the store. I feel like with Twitter and Facebook, I feel like they should let both sides of the aisle, even if they're far right or left, I think they should have a platform. I don't like, for example, I personally think that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram should allow far right, left, and right movements, like even Nazis and KKK. And that might sound controversial, but my reasons are because I feel like if you let these hateful organizations at least say what they want, maybe they won't become as angry and violent because a lot, obviously what they're doing is just stupid and wrong. They still have the right to hate minorities. They still have the right to think they're the master race or whatever. But I feel like if you try to silence them, that just is going to make them more angry and they could get more violent in a physical way. I feel like if you let them have a platform where they can let out all that anger and rage in a tweet or in a post, at least they can release their frustrations there. And it's the internet, you shouldn't let it hurt you. It's not like they're knocking on your door and saying you don't need to be here, you need to get out of my neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, ideas should exist, and when you censor one, you create a precedent because what their ideas are ever changing. What we see as normal and just now could later on in the future be seen as, morally bankrupt. The best example of this would be slavery, because for the longest time, a lot of people saw slavery as a noble institution for the United States. And nowadays we see it as one of the grossest injustices against human history. because particularly against the African Americans, because of how brutally mistreated they were, that they had no voice, they had no say, and that they were born into a life of servitude, and that is not a life that anyone should live. But ideas change over time. And when you start to, I mean, I kind of understand that, yes, these social media platforms, they can basically do what they want because they're private organizations and they have their own community standards. But what they have to do, and like I mentioned earlier, is they have to be equal with it. Because, if you start banning just one particular party, particularly far right parties, then that creates a precedent. And this would be stuff that the right would then hold on to, is these social media sites are extremely biased towards right leading sites. And they're going to protect the left as much as possible. And in a way, you can kind of see that, particularly with how demonetization is happening, particularly on YouTube, where it looks like it's targeting mostly right-leaning sites. But of course, they do target some left-leaning sites too, but it looks like it's basically uneven. It's an uneven distribution of enforcing these particular standards, which is something that if these sites want to do that, I personally would be fine if they allow every possible idea to be out there. But what they have to do is they have to actually enforce their policies and do it with everyone and not just have a particular political bias because they're still offended that this orange guy won the presidency. So therefore, they're going to make sure that the right doesn't have a say, because that'll only make them feel like martyrs. That'll only make them feel validated and vindicated in their beliefs. And that will cause their side to actually have more power. It's funny how the First Amendment works. It's funny how freedom of speech works, because if you start censoring speech, a lot of people would see that as a bad thing to do. And of course, I understand that there are certain things that should not exist, certain ideas that should not be proposed, like, yelling fire in the theater, or particularly saying things like libel or slander. Those are things that I am against, of course. But, if you let the idea exist, you can accurately criticize it and even try to educate a person. Of course, there's like, now if that starts to become extreme and people start saying very, very hateful things like, okay, since you're allowing me to say anything on this platform, I'm going to say kill X group of people. Now that's something that will actually cause harm, and that's something that should be removed. But then that's a very nebulous statement, because how do you determine what is good speech and what is bad speech? Yes, of course, you can see very obvious examples of it where people, the Nazis, for example, would say very extreme things that people can clearly see as something that should not be said. But if you say something like, oh, I don't agree with certain abortion laws, is that something that's cause for you to immediately get banned? Maybe some people will argue yes, maybe some people will argue no, but it's something very nebulous. And that's another particular subject that people hold on to a lot. And it is a very divisive subject by its very nature. But it's not something as clear cut, black and white, good and evil as I'm one that's for slavery. Like, that's something that's very evil, and that's something that should be criticized and called out for. But can't just straight up cancel people because they have a difference of opinion of the majority. And this is going back to my main point of how social media is causing people to become a lot more divisive, because people see just the smallest difference in opinion. Like, it could be that this person is, let's do the left purity test. Like, okay, this guy's pro climate change. This guy is, pro choice. This guy is pro immigration rights, pro LGBTQ rights, pro all of these diversity points. But then that person has a particular opinion on the Second Amendment. Let's say, for example, the guy is for self-defense and not for the banning of all guns. But a lot of people on the left, particularly the more progressive side, they want a straight up ban of these weapons. And if you say, no, you can't do that because you have to consider the fact that the United States is huge, and largely a lot of the conversations and discourse and debates come between the urban cities and the rural areas, because those types of lives are very different. If you're about to get robbed in your own house and you live in Los Angeles, you could call the police and they'll be there in like 3 to 4 minutes, something like that. If you're in a rural city and someone's about to break into your house, you call the cops, they'll be there in 30 minutes. You'll be dead in 30 minutes. So therefore, you can see why those people would be pro Second Amendment. I'm here to defend myself. But then you also see the other side of the aisle where people are like, okay, you have these guns, that's fine. But then all these mass shootings happen in urban areas because of guns. So therefore, we should ban it. And then it's the huge back and forth. But people will see, going back to my example of the person who has fulfilled all of the purity tests of the left except for that Second Amendment, everybody would immediately disown them and try to get them deplatformed because, oh, they're not my side anymore. The guy's essentially right wing. And that's kind of my whole point with this is, if you're going to try to cancel somebody, you have to make sure that you distribute that type of censorship equally. I can't stress that enough, because it does look like they're trying to make the right look like martyrs. And the right is going to see that, and they're going to basically embrace that and say, hey, the mainstream media, the social media outlets, basically all entertainment is against us. So therefore, we're going to dig our heels in. We're going to clench our fists, and we're going to attack back and act more united, which is something that, going back to 2016, that's essentially what happened. The left they were doing purity tests with their own, so they were eating each other out, and the right became more united because they're like, all right, we just have one politician and we can't just do the purity test like they're doing it, so we have to help out. And then he won, and people are still mad about that. And that's just how shit works. And they're trying to do something else in 2020, which might backfire on them tremendously. We don't know yet, because like we said with the analogy of how social media is like a train going down the tracks, with the main conductor not being on it anymore and decided to leave and get a martini somewhere in fucking Silicon Valley while the train's about to jump over the fucking cliffs. We don't know what's about to happen. We have to be more aware of the fact that social media is not real fucking life. It never will be. It never will replace real life. Two, words do have consequences. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, they do have ramifications. So my suggestion is very simple. Like, if you know it's going to cause shit, it's going to cause a shitstorm, and you don't want to be part of the shitstorm, then don't fucking post it. And also keep in mind that the best thing you can do sometimes is not try to fix everyone, because you can spend your whole life trying to create an entire discourse with other people, a more peaceful, a more rational discourse. And yes, that is a noble cause, that is a noble effort for you to do, and you can spend day in and day out trying to do it, break yourself down to the bone, break yourself down to your cells and atoms just to make things better. And yes, you could be good at that. Yes, you might actually help out a lot of people. But you have to also understand the site itself is so big. It is such an overwhelming task that sometimes the best thing you can do is cut yourself off from it. Immediately remove yourself from it and actually go the fuck outside once, which is essentially what I did. And I basically left Facebook earlier this week because I realized that I can't help everyone as much as I want to. I alone can't do it. And sometimes you sacrifice yourself more for others, so much so that you have nothing left for yourself. And sometimes the best thing you can do is to help everyone. First, you must help yourself. And that sounds very selfish, but at the same time, that is self-preservation speaking. Because yes, you can give yourself to everyone. You can give everything that you possibly can. But when you have to help yourself, you might have nothing left. And sometimes you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your own mental health. You have to take care of your own happiness and well-being. And I'm seeing how this goes. This is a week. I sound like a fucking guy who goes to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm 1 week sober at Facebook, but it feels good. It feels good to actually appreciate just how human interaction is, and to see how these outlets work from now a third person perspective, or from somebody from the outside looking in who used to be an insider. And it feels good because you can actually see things through a more objective lens. And it's something I suggest. I don't suggest for everybody to just get up and leave Facebook, because that sounds like something that ain't gonna happen. It's too big to fail now. But at least the day off, go off the grid for once. Feels great. And that's just my whole suggestion: is you have to understand that social media is not everything. The people around you are everything, and you are everything. And you have to remember about yourself. I know this was very long-winded, but yes.
What brought you into atheism, Alex?
It's a long story. I always was a believer ever since I was a kid, just like almost every other atheist that eventually starts doing this shit. But long story short, I was a Catholic. The way I viewed my beliefs is I compartmentalized them. So I never denied the effectiveness of the scientific method. I was always a science nerd ever since I was a kid. And I always appreciated it as the most important way, and the most effective way, rather, to understand the natural world and our place in it. And I saw religion, particularly my specific religion, as my spiritual enlightenment, as how I'm going to be saved, because there are certain things that science cannot explain, and this is where religion comes in to try to answer those questions. That's how I've always been. That was until I took a class in comparative mythologies. While I was doing that class, I started to realize that most religions have a similar skeletal structure. They usually answer the same questions, and usually in similar ways. An example of this would be, one of the major ones is, where do we come from / why are we here? And usually the answer is, okay, a god or a group of gods or some specific force in the universe created us, usually in that being's image, because we tend to anthropomorphize things. Even for like a good example is, when you start complaining at your car for not starting, you start complaining at it as if it's like an ex that you're mad at. We anthropomorphize everything. We give non-living things living values, living qualities, in order for us to relate to it. That's how we understand the world more so, because the best thing we understand about the universe is ourselves. So if we see ourselves in something, we can relate to it. And the reason why we're here usually tends to be the god or gods or the spiritual thing in the universe created us for usually one purpose. It's largely to worship them. Of course, they would always throw in some guise of morality of, you have to be good, you have to love your fellow neighbor, you have to do these things in order to be a good person. But at the end of the day, the main focus is you have to appease the gods. Also, like another one is what happens after we die. Usually most religions have some version of this, is if you're good, you go to a good place. If you're bad, you go to a bad place. Now, it doesn't always have to be an actual place. It could just be that, you respawn as a cockroach, or if you believe in reincarnation and all that shit. But since I realized that, my beliefs with Hinduism, which in that mythology class, like it was talking about extinct religions, such as, the Greek pantheon of gods, the Mesopotamians, the Celtics, and then then we talked about Hinduism, because Hinduism is the oldest extant religion, although it has been around roughly the same time as those religions were too. So, I'm reading a story about how there's this god who got his head cut off, and this other god got worried, so he grabbed the elephant's head and put it on that person's head, and now that's Ganesh. And I find that hilarious, but then I'm like, wait a minute. These guys would probably hear the story of, this ultimate all-powerful being who sends his son, who's technically himself, to sacrifice himself to himself, for himself, in order to appease a loophole that he himself created by allowing a talking snake to go inside of a garden and convince the only two people he really gives a shit about to eat a fruit that he himself created. Like, that's a comedy. That sounds fucking hilarious when you think of it that way. I'm like, who am I to judge? Because they're going to see my religion and say it's stupid. Okay, there's 3 different beings, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but they're all technically one. Why are you calling it monotheistic? That's clearly polytheistic. That's how some people would see it. So I'm like, okay, I don't know if my religion is any more true than yours because they sound the same, just different characters. It's like, whoever the fuck God is or whatever the fuck this energy is, he really loves he, she, it, they, I don't know, it's 2019, whatever the fuck they identify as, to cosplay. They really love to cosplay, just change everything. I was like, I don't know what the fuck I am. So I became agnostic in a sense where it's like I can't say that I know, but I was inclined to say there has to be something because of how the universe is and how everything functions. It functions as if there was some sort of designer that created it. Now, again, I'm not talking about in the creationist sense of there is that being and that being is the cause of everything. It could be that maybe that being did it. They used Big Bang cosmology, they used evolution, they used all of these scientific methods in order to actually create everything. And then they just let it be, like just starting the catalyst, and then they stop. And then everything else just happens to go as it does, kind of like how most deists argue for the existence of a god. So that's how I was. And I thought even like religious people would actually do that. That was until I found out about Ken Ham and Answers in Genesis. And that was fun, because I was in a paleontology class. I did not know shit about this, but I heard from the paleontology professor that Bill Nye, the science guy, was going to have a debate with Ken Ham from Answers in Genesis. And I'm like, all right, this guy's a Christian. I have no clue who the fuck this guy is. I have no clue about creationism or any of this sort. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to watch. I'm going to see what this religious guy does, because I didn't know Bill Nye was an atheist or not. I don't know. I'm like, all right, let's see how religion stands up against science. And the professor said that was an assignment for us to do, was for us to watch it on our own when it goes live, and then make a few pages of summary, and I get extra credit. So I watch it, and I can't stand him. I cannot fucking stand Ken Ham.
I have to say that I watched that entire debate. I've watched it twice, I think. Definitely watched it once all the way, because I think it's 3 hours long. It's really long. I truly enjoyed it. My favorite part about that entire debate is that Ken Ham just keeps going back to the Bible as his source of knowledge, and he kept arguing that Bill Nye wasn't there, and I'm thinking, dude, you were not there when these books were written, but you're going to argue that these books are true because of your cognitive dissonance. And Bill Nye's a pretty friendly guy. I would argue that he's probably passive. He's not passive aggressive. I feel like when he makes those short clips, like with John Oliver or Trevor Noah, I feel like he only does those to be funny and try and stay relevant, where he's like, I think he did something like where he was showing what the planet Earth was, and John was acting like a kid, and then he set it on fire, and he says, now the Earth's on fire, you fucktards, or something. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember what Bill said, but it was hilarious. That debate, I honestly felt bad for Bill, because while it probably was good publicity for him, not only was the venue at the Creation Museum in Kentucky, but I felt like he was really just wasting his time, and he was talking to at least half, if not more, a room full of cats that are just staring at a wall, who are completely ignoring everything that he's saying. And I would argue that probably most people who were there in support of Ken Ham, none of them probably decided that day, oh, I'm gonna look more into what Bill Nye said, and I'm going to see all about this. If anything, they're like, that's the devil standing up there, because Kentucky that's the Bible Belt. So if anything, everyone probably who was on Ken Ham's side from the beginning probably just thought that Bill Nye was the devil. This is Satan trying to convince me that, there's no God and that the flood never happened. And it's really sad that people have that mindset. It's honestly scary. So that brings me to a question. In your opinion, Alex, do you think that religion is toxic? And if so, should it be gone?
I'm at a different point in my life now that I cannot answer that question with a simple yes or no, because if you caught me 2014, I'd probably say yes. It is tough. It is something that is egregious. It is something that is offensive, and it should be removed from the world for the betterment of our species. But over the years, I've kind of waned in how I specifically targeted religion. Now I'm at the point where I really don't care much about what people believe, in the sense I'm not being like an apatheist where I simply don't give a fuck about what people believe in, but I'm more like, hey, people need meaning in life. And that's the main thing that most human beings need. More than anything else, people want to find a meaning. Me personally, the meaning of life is that which you make it. Now, that might not be the best answer for people, because a lot of people like to have direction. A lot of people like to have instruction. I'm kind of one of those, especially at work most of the time, because I'm lazy. That's just me talking. But most people like to have concrete things of, okay, this is your meaning. Your meaning is you are a child of God and you are blessed in his image, and your whole point in life is to worship him, preach his word to the choir, preach his word to those who do not want to listen to you, because you love them and you care about what happens to their soul after they die. You're not doing this because you're trying to be an asshole. You're doing this because this is what you believe, this is what makes you happy, and this is what gives you meaning, and this is what helps you get through the day. And I am 100% for that. What I do find toxic, and this is something that I will always find toxic, is when people use their religion to shit on other people. And by that, I mean, very simply, it's one thing if you say, hey, I can't do that because my beliefs don't allow me to do that. That's fine. I don't mind. But if you say, you can't do that because my beliefs say you cannot do that, and therefore I'm actually going to push laws to make sure you cannot do that one specific thing, there's where I have a problem. This goes back to the whole anti-LGBT, anti-fucking science, anti-abortion, like all this shit where people say you can't do that because my belief says you can't do that. That's like, complaining that someone else is eating an ice cream and they can't do that because you're on a diet. So fucking what? Who fucking cares? They're living their life. Let them fucking be. Don't be a dick about it. That's the bottom line. Right now, it's just don't be a dick. I don't care what the fuck you believe or what you don't believe. Just don't be a fucking dick about it. I've seen this shit also happen with atheists as well, where people and I had this conversation with one of my friends last night, where she had this one guy in her life where they used to be really close, and then she became religious. Most people, you always hear the stories of people losing their faith and then becoming an atheist, like myself. There's also those people who had no faith and then they found it, and she the way she found it, it's her way, and I respect it because of the way she described it to me. I don't want to get into detail about it because that was personal. But when he found out, he immediately was like, oh, I can't be friends with someone who's stupid. And I'm like, wow. See, this is why you always get those religious people that always call atheists like self-entitled, intellectual, pseudo-intellectual assholes. Because this is usually how it boils down, is people had those experiences with those particular types of atheists, and therefore they paint everyone with a broad brush. It's also the similar sense that atheists have with religious people, where they'd have issues with specific fundamentalists, and then they assume that everybody is the same way. That's not the fucking case. And like how we mentioned earlier, life is full of grays. Life is full not just of grays, but of different colors and hues. That's what makes life beautiful, because you get to see everything. When you see all of the colors everywhere, that's what makes life meaningful. If you only see life through one specific lens, you are not living. Long-winded way of saying just don't be a dick.
I love that. I actually want to add to that. So that's how it was for me. Honestly, I think me and you are more alike than I ever realized. And we have had long talks before. When I first got into atheism, and it's like I said on my previous podcast, it's just like Jim Jeffries says, you're very angry. You feel very angry because you feel like you've been lied to your whole life. So for the first year, I was very angry. I wanted to debate everyone. And then I have gotten to a point where I don't like religion still. I don't think it's toxic because, like, it's just like you said, people need to find meaning. So for me, this might sound condescending, but I feel like it's for people who are weak. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, because I have my weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like when someone's religious, their biggest weakness is a fear of loss of control. So this idea that I can control my destiny, or religion, gives me this sense of comfort because I can't get it from a human being. I can't get it from a pet. I'm not getting it from my family or friends. Maybe I can get it from this God. So That's why I've changed a lot. I haven't finished my book because I'm not that person anymore. I don't think religion, in a moderate sense, I don't think it is toxic at all, because those people aren't the ones going around, at abortion clinics, protesting, yelling and screaming. They're not the ones going to a gay pride parade with a sign that says you're all going to burn in hell. I have relatives who are religious who don't agree with gay marriage, who think abortions are evil. I have relatives who don't even think you should date someone who's not the same color as you. It's horrible, but they
Yeah.
don't go out and protest it either. They wouldn't have gone to that Charlottesville thing saying kill Jews, or I think they said Jews will not replace us. They probably said all the horrible things. They just didn't get all the recordings. They wouldn't go out and say, we need to kill black people, or they wouldn't go out and say we need to go to abortion clinics and kill those doctors and nurses that are helping assist those abortions. They aren't going to go to a gay pride parade and say, fuck you, you're going to burn in hell and all that stuff. They're very passive about that stuff because they just have their own life to deal with. They don't have time to deal with that. I personally don't understand how anyone has the time out of their day to go and demand someone do something with their life. It's like, I get that you think that it's a life, like, when it comes to abortion. Come on, you have no right to push your agenda on someone else. And that is where I have a problem with religion. That's when I start having the issues, is when they feel like they have the moral superiority, so they need to go around and parent everybody else who doesn't think like they do. I think that is what's wrong with religion at this point, because it's getting out of hand. Let gay people get married. It's like, why does that bother you? Is it you imagining two men sucking each other off? Does that bother you? Well, then don't think about it. They want to get married. Let them be miserable too, because that's all marriage is. It's just miserable for anyone, for the man and the woman, for the guy, It doesn't matter if you're with a woman or if you're with a guy. As soon as they move in, they're going to be a completely different person, because that's just how we are as humans. We want to assert ourselves in a relationship. So I say let them be just as miserable as a straight couple. They're going to be happy. They're going to be sad. They're all going to experience the same feelings. It boils down to, how far do you want to push your agenda in a free country? Because it seems to me that, especially when it comes to education, I guess a lot of it is because I've been listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson since he was on Cosmos. That's kind of when I really kind of figured out who he was. I didn't really know a lot about him until that point, because I didn't know he had Star Talk, or maybe that was after. I don't remember. The way he spoke about religion, he's not religious, and he says, I'm not an atheist, but we know he's an atheist. But it's just, I kind of understand where he's coming from. Like, I don't want to be associated with TJ, the amazing atheist, because I don't think he's a hateful person, as I said in my previous podcast, but his earlier videos do make him come off as this angry person. And there's nothing wrong with being frustrated, but like that Cult of Dusty guy, I don't really like Dusty Smith. Most of his videos, for the most part, were very belittling. It's all these videos are great when you're first coming out, but once you've been an atheist for a while, you're like, man, he's such an asshole. And it's like, you're supposed to be representing a positive humanistic society, but you're representing us in this light that we're just as negative and hateful as the Christians that we claim are being hateful and negative. You know what I mean? And I don't like that mindset, because that's just going to push people away. I feel like it's better to be positive and try and show people in a friendly manner why they're wrong, because they are, but don't show it in a way where it's like top 10 stupid Christians who say stupid things, or videos of going to Christian rallies and doing everything they do at our rallies. I think there's that one atheist rally they have in DC once a year I want to go to. It's like, why do you want to act like they act? It's like, we're supposed to be the bigger person. Like, isn't that how we raise our kids, is to be the bigger person? But then we go and we do exactly what they do. It's like, that's just hypocrisy to me. I will never go to a church and yell at people and say, you guys are idiots. You guys all believe in make-believe bullshit. I'm not going to be that person, But at the end of the day, you can do what you want. The way people are going to remember you, to me, is important. Do I want to be remembered as the guy who went to, a Christian festival and just tried to debate everyone and cause a scene? It's like, why are you being so extra about that stuff, you know?
Or do you want to be remembered as that one person that was actually genuine, caring, and actually cares about the well-being of others? And then you surprise them by saying, hey, I'm not doing this because I'm religious, because I'm not. I'm just doing this because I want to see good in the world. I want, because the world is better when people are nice to one another. No matter what you believe, that is the bottom line. Like, no matter how things end up, no matter what you decide to believe in at the end of the day, all that matters is that people need people. And if you're there and you're a helping hand, people are going to remember you and they're going to care for you and they're going to reciprocate that as well. Not everyone will. The fact that you did it and you did it with good intentions and you're not doing it while expecting anything in return, you're just doing it just because it's the right thing to do. That's what matters. For me, at least. What matters most in life is to be good, for goodness sake. That's something that I hold near and dear to me.
Is being an atheist in Los Angeles easier with a liberal majority, or do you find it just as difficult if you were to live in the Bible Belt?
It's very different here because living in Los Angeles in particular, a lot of people don't give a fuck about what you do. At least that's from what I've experienced. Everybody in LA experiences LA differently. LA is known for multiple things, largely cocaine and fake people. And I haven't seen a lot of cocaine. I wish I have, but I've seen a lot of fake people. And that's a major thing. But also a lot of people here, they just don't give a fuck because we don't have the time. Because LA is full of people who are really fucking busy most of the time. Depends on where you go. But a lot of people, they don't care. And I feel like if I was somewhere like in the Bible Belt, I probably wouldn't be as open. Then again, I'm not as open as I would like to be. But again, this is going back to the previous answer to my question is I really don't care about that. As long as they see me as a person, and I will only say that I'm an atheist if they ask. I don't like to be those types of people. And I don't like it when, religious people do this too, where they just immediately walk in and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Christian. I'm like, cool. I just met you like 5 seconds ago. All right. I didn't need to know that now, but hey, it's fine. But I know that whenever you come out as an atheist, doesn't matter where you're at, because there's always religious people everywhere. It's always has that connotation of, oh, you're a Satanist, or oh, you're an asshole. That really depends on who people dealt with, like how they dealt with people. But I know LA itself, from the interactions I've had with other people, like I've realized that other people were atheists before they realized I myself was an atheist, and especially recently with the recent group of friends I've been dealing with. I found that a lot of them were religious way before they found out I ran that page. I used to be a bit more open about it. Now I just don't really care much. And I'm pretty sure that I would be saying a whole different thing if I lived where fucking Kentucky. I mean, yeah, I probably would have answered that differently.
I feel like being in Houston, it's very similar to what you were saying about Los Angeles. Here, nobody really cares what you're doing. Everyone is very busy. They're trying to get to work, trying to get to special events, or trying to get to a bar or something. That's one thing I love about being in a large city, is because no one cares what you're doing. If you want to hang out with someone, typically, I feel like the way society's moving in general is they try to keep religion and politics out of friendship, because whether you see eye to eye or not, like let's say two people are conservative, but person A thinks there should be stricter gun control and person B thinks there should be no gun control, then that could cause a rift. And since it's kind of a political kind of thinking, then they just kind of sweep it under the rug. And it's like, let's focus on things we like. We like movies, we like television, we like sports, we like video games or comedy, special stand-up things or whatever the fuck. That's what people nowadays are trying to focus on. That's where that might be something that drives them to be a different person when they're online. Back to the Facebook thing. Maybe because they bottle all this up, they feel like, oh, I'm in this group on Facebook. It's a closed group. I can go in here and I can let out all my feelings. I hate Trump. I love Trump. I hate abortion. I love abortion. I hope Facebook doesn't have the ability to influence 2020's election, because I honestly am a little worried. I feel like because of all the stuff they let get through, that they don't realize the damage, or maybe they don't care. I personally think of Facebook as a faceless company. It's called Facebook, but where's the face of the company? I mean, it's supposed to be this Mark Zuckerberg guy, but he doesn't really seem like he's attached with reality. Or
Yeah, he
he
reminds me of Data from Star Trek. Although Data has more emotions.
Mark just doesn't seem like he's in touch with reality at all. It's like he's in his own. I don't think it's some goofy conspiracy that he's some Illuminati. I feel like he's not in touch with what's really going on. I feel like he sees the success. He just wants Facebook to be number one. And I think that can be very dangerous. I think Facebook is dangerous, not in a conspiratorial sense. I just think it's dangerous in general because, like what we said earlier and you said, this tribalism is, I feel like it's getting worse and it's not getting better. And no one wants to really talk about it because everyone's kind of okay with it, because once you delete all the people who don't think like you and you only add the people who think like you, then there's no problem, because the problem is gone because you removed the person that you felt was part of the problem, which was the individual on your friends list who doesn't have the same views that you have. I actually debated my dad recently because he's actually a Christian. He's a conservative. He says he kind of labels himself as a libertarian because he doesn't like big government and he wants everyone out of his business. You know, he doesn't like surveillance, but he's not like paranoid. He definitely thinks we went to the moon and he thinks vaccines are safe and he trusts most medications. And we were debating on abortion and I brought it up because they were fostering a kid and the kid's mom was a drug addict. She kind of prostituted herself to make money to buy the drugs, and I was just saying how, imagine if she didn't feel pressured to keep her son, which I think he was a great kid, and I honestly feel bad because I feel like he's going to fall through the cracks because he's in the system, and I do feel like he will become a criminal one day, not because that's who he is, but because society is going to mold him that way, because he's already showing signs that he doesn't feel like his life has meaning. And I said, imagine if she didn't feel pressured and she would have just had an abortion. This kid wouldn't be suffering today, not having a mom who gives a shit and having to be sent to different families every 3 months to people who don't really love him. And, you know, I honestly wish, and I think about this a lot, is I honestly wish that I would have sat him down and talked to him, because I think he was about 10 or 11. Not is. I think he's 10 or 11, and I wish I would have said that, you know, I don't know if this means much to you, but your life does matter and you are important. Just because things aren't looking up for you and your life is different than my little brother's. And I wish I would have done that, and I didn't, not because I didn't want to, but because I thought about it later on, and I don't know, maybe down the road I could maybe tell him that if I ever see him again. Anyway, so me and my dad argued about it, and I'm actually only for first trimester abortions. I don't support second and third. Some people support all of them. I only support first trimester because the nervous system hasn't been developed yet and they won't feel any pain, and that to me makes it okay. But at the worst case scenario, like let's say, you know, second or third, the baby's going to kill the mom if they don't get rid of it, or the fetus, whatever, then I'm perfectly fine with taking that thing out, because I would rather the mom live so one day she can try again, have the baby come out and she die. He just started yelling and screaming and getting upset, and I was very calmly said, you know, Dad, you yelling and you raising your voice doesn't make you right in this debate. It just makes you ignorant. And it didn't get anywhere. And I respect my dad, even though he's a Trump supporter. You know, he's my dad. I love him. I wish we could have had a more civil debate. And I feel like that's just one of those things, like I said, it's really hard to talk about politics or religion with anyone you care about, because sometimes you don't have those same views. It can kind of hurt a relationship. And that's the last thing that I want to do, you know?
Right.
I feel like that's one of those things, that's one of those topics that should be discussed more. Maybe that's the problem, is we're too worried about offending the other person. Maybe I should have kept arguing with him. He has his beliefs and I have mine. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you ever had situations where you had to argue with a relative about abortion, or just any topic, politics or social?
I try to avoid it as much as I can, because for somebody who argues a lot online, I don't like arguing a lot in person. Because I know emotions flare, people start to say things that they don't really mean, but they say it in the heat of the moment, and that can just hurt a relationship forever. But I have had some arguments with particularly like some of my relatives where I would talk about religion, and this was again when I just started. So I had very strong opinions. The way we argued about it was did not argue specifically of why religion is toxic because my parents found out, well, my mom specifically, that I was an atheist, right? She still thinks it's just a phase or it's just something that I like, oh, I just don't pray a lot. That's how she has it, and that's how I'm keeping it. And I don't like to, poke that hornet's nest. But I remember when I came out, we just argued specifically like things of like, oh, if God isn't real, then why isn't God we trust in the dollar bill? And I'm like, well, actually, that was added this time because of the Red Scare, and we didn't want to be no commies, so we say, hey, we ain't godless, we religious. And so I would just go into that. I kind of saw the telltale signs of if I keep going on with this is not going to end well. Those are some things I like to keep away from, unless if I'm fully aware that the person that I'm arguing with can have an actual conversation with me without getting all upset and are willing to listen to me, to hear me out, then I'm fine with that. But 99% of the time, you'll never find that person because most people like to dig their heels in with their own opinions and say, I'm right. And if you think I'm wrong, go fuck yourself. That's how most people are, because most people don't like to see an opposing point of view that contradicts their entire belief. Most people don't like to be proven wrong. And because that's an ego boost, that's an ego destroyer too. People just dig their heels in and start saying random shit.
Yeah, you think it's possible?
First, everyone has to unplug and actually talk to people. And I'm not saying, and I know a lot of people, they hear that and they'd always use the meme of shut up boomer or something like that. It's something that we need. So we don't see people anymore. We really don't. Even the people that are in our lives, we don't see them anymore. Largely has to do with the fact that we simply don't have time. Because we're always busy with our own lives. We're always, working or going to school or doing a bunch of other shit, but we never really have the time to actually hang out with somebody. And when we do, it's like, what, 30 minutes? Just go get a drink or go get a cup of coffee, go eat. And that's about it. But even then, that's also something that hardly ever happens. Most of the people that you eventually would like talk to is online. And maybe the main reason why you only talk to them online is because when you have free time, all you do is be online for like 2 to 3 to 4 hours a day, minimum. Like I know people say like, oh, most people on average are only online for an hour. That's fucking bullshit. A lot of people are online like before they even go to bed for a good 2 to 3 hours. You can use that time for other things, like, I don't know, calling somebody, even just talking to somebody on the phone is very different than just texting them or sending them like snaps or stuff like that. Even snaps are kind of different because that's a bit, for me, it seems a bit more personal, but not really, because you're not actually talking to the person. And it's funny because a lot of people are so scared of talking to other people that they just like to do shit, like behind social media. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm precisely leaving Facebook. People are so disconnected. I feels like people are so disconnected from reality that they don't like to talk to other people. The only time they like to talk to somebody is via text. And I know there's all those funny memes about it where it's like, oh, you could have just sent this via email, or, oh, you could have just texted me instead of having to do all this shit. But, you can say it'll take you 20 minutes to write over text, which you can tell somebody in 2 minutes. And you can actually talk to somebody a lot longer and not just have everything written out, because when you write something out, it takes a lot longer than actually speaking it. And sometimes you need to hear that voice. You need to feel that embrace. You need to see the person face to face. And I know that sounded poetic, and that's something that I wasn't trying to do, but fuck it, we're going to keep it that way. That's a main thing that needs to be done first, is for us to realize that social media is not real life, and that the only people that really matter are the ones that are right the fuck in front of you. And yes, it's fine to have your online friends. It's fine to talk to people like that. And I'm not denying that social media is great at making you find people that you eventually become good friends with. But at the end of the day, is whoever is in your life is already in your life. And yes, you'll make new friends. You always will. And that's how life is. People come and go. They will always come and go, and that's life. But in order for us to progress as a species, we first have to have that talk, that communication that we've had for thousands of years. And that's why we've survived for so long, is because we were able to interact, work together in order to progress and actually do shit. Because otherwise, like, how the fuck were we going to conquer the world? What, by talking online? Not really. This is just a byproduct of it. We're lucky that we have that. But it took people like talking and going the distance, actually traveling, actually going out and doing shit for us to then say, hey, it's great that we have all this shit now. That's because we have had that communication. But I feel like we will progress as a species because every year gets better. As much as people say like it's getting worse, it's not. Because you can say whatever the fuck you want about how shitty 2019 is. But you cannot deny that there are no fucking publicly endorsed lynchings anymore. You cannot deny that there's no publicly endorsed fucking same-sex banning in the US anymore. You cannot deny that because we have progressed as a species. You cannot deny that people will fucking deny you access to going to a school because you decided to date outside of your race. We have progressed so much as a species. And I know it's going to take time. And what we're noticing right now are largely the death throes of people who cannot accept other people because they're different. We're experiencing the death throes right now. That's why you're seeing the revitalization of a lot of these hateful groups, is because they know that their power is waning and they know that their time is coming up. It's like cornering a rat. It will try to fight until the very end, until it cannot fight no more. And that's how a hateful idea dies. It's through final violent bangs, but eventually it dies and we progress as a species. So I have a feeling that in order for us to get there, we have to work together. We fucking have to. We don't have to fucking live in a world where we're split, we're polarized by different specific lenses that we see the screen in. We're not watching the same screen, two different movies. We're both watching the same film. And once you realize that, then you know what needs to be done. But until then, people have to fucking have that conversation. And the best way you can do that is once in a while, unplugging, standing up, going outside, calling that one person that you missed for so long, and actually deciding, hey, let's meet up, or hey, I really miss you, and just saying I love you to somebody. That will make the whole world of a difference, because that's all we need. All we need in this life is love. And the only way you can share love is by actually going at the distance and sharing it with everyone. And that's how we will progress. We will progress when love triumphs over hate.
I completely agree. I feel like Facebook, social media in general, it has a huge role in this alienation, because used to I didn't mind talking on the phone before I had social media, but it's gotten to the point where I want everyone to text me. I prefer texting myself, because as I'm writing out a text to a loved one, a friend, or a random person, because I do that all the time. I love talking to random people. But whenever I send a message, before I send it, I can say, wait, is this what I want to say? And then I can erase it. So that's probably the one reason why I love texting so much more over calling, because if you say the wrong thing in a call, you have to spend 15 minutes explaining why you didn't mean that. But I feel like social media overall, I feel like it's kind of making everyone become introverted, because before social media, I actually enjoyed going and hanging out with people. Now, I still do that, but it's gotten to where it's like when I am done working, or if I'm done at the gym or something, or I'm done doing what I need to do out in public, I'm ready to go home, ready to do my own thing and kind of be by myself, but with my social media. I want to get on Instagram, or I want to get on that new Call of Duty mobile game, or I want to get on Xbox, or I want to work on a upcoming video or something for my channel. And I don't really want to socialize with the outside world anymore. I avoid my neighbors like the plague. I hate that that's kind of how I'm becoming. And it's not that I'm an introvert. I don't think I'm naturally one, because I was pretty talkative in high school. And I just feel like social media is changing that for everyone, not just me or you or anyone else in particular, but I think it's happening slowly to everyone, because it's like you said, no one wants to turn it off. We just keep going in this singular direction of thinking that, oh, I don't have to interact with anyone today. I can just do that on social media. I watched a video through that series called Adam Runs Everything, and I met Adam Conover in person. He's a friendly guy. I have nothing against him, but when he did a video about the internet, someone said, look, everyone around, I think they were in a coffee shop, and he said, no one's communicating. He goes, yeah, they are. They're just communicating with people around the world. So it seems to me that people might use that as an argument, saying people are having conversations, people are interacting. They're doing it with other people around the world, and that's a good thing. But it's a double-edged sword, you know? So you're communicating with people that you would not have communicated with 40 years ago. But at the same time, the people you would have communicated with 40 years ago, your neighbors or someone within your vicinity, you're not really going to do that anymore because now you found more people interesting elsewhere. And you're never going to see these people physically. You won't hold hands. You won't have a cup of coffee. You might FaceTime or do a WeChat or something, but you won't be face to face like you're talking about. And that to me causes people to become introverts. I feel like we've been having this same mindset through this whole podcast, and I like that. It's nice.
Yeah, it's something that I've come to realize, and particularly like at the beginning, like at the end of this week, because like I've had instances with people, and I'm not going to mention any names, and I still love all of them to death, but I've realized that a lot of people are changing because of this. And it's funny because this is the first time I actually see it, where it's like, okay, you want to meet up, but you only ask me over text. When I try to call you, you don't pick up because you don't like to talk. But it's like, I need you to talk because I need that. I need to hear your voice because I miss it so fucking much. And I don't like it. Now I'm at the point where I don't like it, where if I'm hanging out with somebody and all they're doing is being on their phone, I don't like it anymore because I'm like, you're not here with me. You're here physically, but you're not. You're on your phone. And that's an issue that I have too. Because I usually am on my phone on Facebook just looking up memes and sharing it with the person that's right the fuck next to me. And like, yeah, that's fun and all, but I'm here, you're here. We don't see each other at all, really. And I really enjoy your company. So I want to see you. And most of the time when that's the case, like if I'm with somebody I really fucking love, and, I've had those experiences recently, earlier in the month of October, I really fucking love this person. And I'm like, at that point, I've changed myself where it's like, I'm here with you. This phone does not exist. Yes, I'll probably share shit on Snapchat that we're doing shit together. But again, that's why Snapchat doesn't really fit under this mold. But if it's like Facebook or something where it's like, all right, I'm just going to look up a meme, find something to make you laugh. Like, yeah, it's fun if you're doing that as a small thing. But if the whole crux of us hanging out is to do shit that we normally would have done online, I don't like it anymore. It's like, I'm here with you. Let's talk. Let's talk about something. I don't know. Anything really. I want to hear your voice. I want to see you. I want to hug you. I want to tell you I love you. I want to say all of these things because we're so deprived for attention, like physical attention, not just touch, not just kissing, not just sex, not any of that. Just fucking talking, actually talking, because that's what brings us all together is hearing someone's voice. Because you cannot deny this. Like, yes, you can read a very beautiful poem that someone sends you. Yes, you can read a very beautiful text that someone sends you and feel all happy and joyous and all that shit. And it feels great. But you cannot deny that when they say it to you, it means a lot more. It always means a lot more because you know that it is coming from within. It is not just something that anybody could have just pulled that out of the internet. It's like, all right, I'm going to write you this poem. Okay, how do I know it's you? Yeah, you can say it's yours. You can say it's copyrighted. You can say all that shit. But how do I know it's you? That it's coming from you? The only way you'll really know is if I tell you, hey, I wrote this for you. Or, hey, I'm going to tell you this. It's better if I say it. So that's a major thing. And I feel like I'm kind of diverging a lot. But that's something that is important, is we're losing that type of connection. And once we actually are able to connect that way and actually like talk to people, actually agree to meeting up, we'll be in a better place.
Again, I just had to get away from Facebook because I feel like it stresses me out. I also
Unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Because then you get that type of depression where it's like, okay, you're sitting down, you're trying to get better, you're trying to go to sleep, you're trying to get like do shit for the next day, but then you check your phone, all of your friends are going out and drinking. Maybe that one person that you really like is doing shit that you wanted to do with them, and then you get all depressed and sad because and it's unnecessary. It's really fucking unnecessary. And that's my major crux is getting stressed over fucking nothing. It's not a life or death situation. Like if you're stressing about like, I'd rather invest that energy in, am I going to pass my test tomorrow? Am I going to, get that promotion? Am I going to get that interview? Am I going to, shit that will actually impact your life right then and there. Like instead of, oh, I'm worried because this one person that's been ignoring me decided to post something. Like, okay, who fucking cares? Who really fucking cares? Yes, there are instances where I would care, but at the same time, like, why are you investing all your energy in this when you could be investing it in, I don't know, doing shit for your own life? They'll come to you. If they really mean shit to you, they will find you. Sorry, I had to cut you off with that.
You're okay. No, I'm actually glad that you brought that up. I feel the same way. I feel like we're on the same page on a lot of these issues. I always find it I will go through my Instagram stories, and I do this too, but everyone's posting in their story the things that they're doing, and I feel like we should, like myself included, we should stop doing that because it's kind of taking away from you enjoying it. I feel like it's a combination of I want people to know that I have this amazing life, and I want people to know what I'm doing, not because I want them to be envious, but I want people just to know, hey, I'm doing this right now. I'm eating. So here's a photo of my food. I do that all the time. Or I think it was yesterday or the day before, I took a photo of myself washing the cars. And I just want people to know I was washing cars. I don't know why I want people to know that. So it's weird. It's like, I'm not saying that no one wants to know what I'm doing, but I don't think that it matters what I'm doing in that moment enough to where I should share it with everyone. Because maybe what if one person is now jealous of what I have, or maybe I'm jealous of what someone has. Well, I personally don't get jealous, but I'm not saying anyone's jealous of me. But what if part of us wants people to know that we have something or that we're somewhere, and then we kind of want them to be a little envious, just maybe a little, like, oh, here's a photo of me in Athens in front of, that famous building, Parthenon. Yeah. What if, someone sees that and they're like, oh, I see. So you want everyone just to know that you have the money to go to Greece, and you know what I'm getting at, right? It's like, why do we want everyone to know what we're doing instead of just enjoying what we're doing and not worrying about if someone is seeing what I'm doing? So I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, but I feel like maybe it's not as genuine why we're doing it. Maybe all of us are doing it because we want people to know that we're successful. We want people to know that we're not boring and that we don't just sit at home all day. That we want people to see the best side of us. It's like I think it's something that Bill Maher talked about, and it's hard for me to support him, but he was talking about how people take photos and videos of every little fucking thing they do, is the way he said it. And it's like, why do you want everyone to know every little thing you're doing? Is it really that important? And I'm thinking to myself, I agree with that. It's not important, all the stuff that we're doing. I feel like to a certain point that I don't I don't know. I don't know. All right, Alex, thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. It was awesome to have you, man.
It's been a pleasure, man.
And we have to do this again. I'm so sorry that it's taken this long to have you on a podcast, but we will definitely have to do this again in the future when we're both not so busy.
We'll see how the stars align next time. The planets decide to align in a certain way. Fuck that bullshit. We'll figure it out.
Awesome, dude. You take care, man.